The October morning in New York City was crisp, the kind where the first bite of autumn sharpened the senses. The streets thrummed with the city's relentless pulse, but inside the ABC studio, the atmosphere was a different kind of electric. The set of The View buzzed with pre-show chaos. Stagehands adjusted spotlights, producers barked orders through headsets, and assistants darted through the corridors, juggling clipboards, coffee, and last-minute notes. Beneath the controlled frenzy, a subtle tension simmered, unnoticed by most but heavy in the air for those attuned to it. Keanu Reeves arrived at 9:10 a.m., stepping out of a modest black sedan parked unceremoniously at the studio's side entrance. At 58, he carried an effortless grace, his black suit tailored but tie-less, his hair slightly tousled in his trademark unpretentious style. His only companion was his agent, Marcus, a wiry man whose nervous energy manifested in constant phone checking. As they navigated the studio's labyrinthine halls, Marcus muttered, "Keep it tight, Keanu. John Wick 4 promo. Focus on the stunts, the action, maybe a light anecdote about training. Stay away from politics or anything too personal. The View's audience loves you, but the hosts can be unpredictable, especially Joy." Keanu nodded, his gaze drifting to the crew bustling around them. He'd done countless talk shows over his 25-year career, but something felt off here. The producers' glances weren't the usual mix of deference or excitement. They carried a predatory curiosity, as if sizing him up for something more than an interview. He shook off the unease, attributing it to the high-stakes energy of live television. Still, a quiet voice in his mind, one honed by years of navigating Hollywood's undercurrents, whispered caution. In the makeup room, a young artist named Sarah worked silently, applying subtle concealer to mask the faint lines of exhaustion from Keanu's recent press tour. She hesitated before speaking, her voice low. "Mr. Reeves, I probably shouldn't say this, but Joy Behar's in a mood today. I overheard the producers. She's got some tough questions planned, real personal stuff." Keanu's eyes met hers in the mirror, his smile warm but guarded. "Thanks for the warning, Sarah. I'm sure it'll be a civilized chat." Sarah bit her lip, her hands pausing mid-brush, as if weighing whether to say more. A production assistant burst in, cutting her off. "Mr. Reeves, entrance rehearsal now." The rehearsal was brisk, almost perfunctory. Keanu would walk out, wave to the audience, greet the hosts, Whoopi Goldberg, Sarah Hyland, Sunny Hostin, and Joy Behar, and settle into the guest chair. Everything seemed routine, but the air crackled with unspoken tension. Joy sat at the host's table, scribbling furiously in a notebook, her expression one of intense, almost manic focus. Whoopi, usually a calming presence, was deep in hushed conversation with a producer, her eyes flicking toward Keanu with a mix of concern and curiosity. Sarah and Sunny appeared more relaxed, chatting lightly, but the collective mood was heavy. 5 minutes to air," the director shouted, and Keanu was ushered backstage to wait. Standing in the dim wings, Keanu's thoughts drifted. He'd always approached interviews with a quiet resolve, a commitment to authenticity shaped by years of loss and resilience. The stillbirth of his daughter, Ava, 25 years ago, had carved a permanent hollow in his heart, teaching him the fragility of life and the value of kindness. He thought of her now, as he often did in moments of quiet, her memory a silent guide. The absence of a pre-interview question list nagged at him. Every major talk show, Letterman, Kimmel, Fallon, provided at least a rough outline of topics. When he asked Marcus about it, his agent shrugged nervously. "They said it's a spontaneous format. The ladies like natural conversations, nothing scripted." Keanu's brow furrowed. Spontaneous sounded like a setup, but Marcus insisted. "It's key for the film's female demographic. You'll charm them, as always." The show opened with Whoopi's familiar warmth. "Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to The View." The audience cheered as the hosts dove into the day's hot topics. A political scandal, a celebrity breakup, a viral TikTok trend. Joy's contributions were sharp, her tone carrying a poorly veiled aggression that set Keanu's instincts on edge as he watched from a backstage monitor. When she mentioned a very special guest joining later, her smile was tight, her eyes glinting with a promise that felt more like a threat than a welcome. After a commercial break, Whoopi introduced him. "Our next guest is a Hollywood legend, known for The Matrix, John Wick, and being one of the kindest souls in the business. Please welcome Keanu Reeves." The audience's applause was thunderous, many standing, their faces alight with genuine admiration. Keanu stepped onto the set, waving humbly, his smile open but cautious. He hugged Whoopi warmly, kissed Sarah and Sunny on the cheek, But when he reached Joy, her handshake was cold, her smile a grimace. "Keanu," she said, her tone clipped. "Joy, pleasure to meet you," he replied, ignoring the chill. He settled into the guest chair, adjusting his microphone, and the interview began smoothly. Whoopi asked about John Wick 4, the grueling stunt training, his collaboration with director Chad Stahelski, the franchise's evolution. Keanu answered with his trademark humility, his self-deprecating humor-drawing laughs. "I'm just trying not to trip over the props," he quipped, earning a chuckle from Sunny. Sarah asked about his favorite action scene, and he described a high-octane motorcycle chase with infectious enthusiasm. For a moment, it felt like a standard promotional slot. The audience engaged, the mood light. Then Joy leaned forward, her eyes glinting with something predatory. "Keanu," she said, her voice slicing through the warmth like a blade. "Do you consider yourself a politically conscious actor, or are you too busy playing the nice guy to notice the real world?" The question was a non sequitur, unrelated to the film and dripping with accusation. The studio fell silent, the audience's laughter replaced by a collective intake of breath. Keanu blinked, surprised but composed. "I try to stay informed, like any citizen," he said carefully. "But I focus on treating people with respect, no matter who they are." Joy's smile was sharp, almost feral. "Respect, sure. But let's be real, don't you Hollywood stars live in a bubble of privilege, completely disconnected from regular Americans?" Whoopi's eyebrows shot up, clearly blindsided. Sarah and Sunny exchanged uneasy glances, their smiles fading. Keanu leaned back slightly, his calm unshaken. "I don't know about a bubble," he said. "I try to connect with people wherever I go, on set, on the subway, at a coffee shop." "The subway?" Joy laughed, the sound harsh and humorless. "That's a nice touch, Keanu. Riding the subway, eating sandwiches on park benches, it's all a bit performative, isn't it? Part of the everyman brand you've so carefully crafted." The audience murmured, some confused, others visibly uncomfortable. A woman in the front row frowned, whispering to her neighbor. Keanu's jaw tightened, but his voice remained even. "I ride the subway because it's practical. I eat on benches because I'm hungry. It's just how I live, not a performance." Joy wasn't deterred. She flipped through her notes, her smile sharpening. "Let's talk about your philanthropy. You donated part of your Matrix earnings to the crew, right? Funny how that generous gesture always seems to leak to the press, boosting your saintly image." Keanu frowned, genuinely puzzled. "I didn't publicize that," he said. "I shared those earnings because the crew's work made the film what it was. It's about fairness, not headlines." "Fairness," Joy echoed sarcastically, her voice rising. "How convenient. Tell me, Keanu, your charity foundation, how much actually reaches those in need versus, say, administrative costs?" The question struck at the heart of his foundation, a deeply personal endeavor tied to cancer research and children's aid, causes rooted in the stillbirth of his daughter, Ava, and the loss of loved ones to illness. Keanu's hands clenched briefly, but he answered calmly. "The foundation's finances are independently audited and public. Every dollar is accounted for." "Are they?" Joy pressed, her tone dripping with skepticism. "Because I've got numbers here that suggest a hefty chunk goes to overhead." Sunny tried to intervene, her voice tense. "Joy, maybe we should stick to the movie." But Joy cut her off sharply. "No, Sunny, the public deserves to know who they're idolizing. This saint narrative needs a reality check." The audience's discomfort grew palpable, some shifting in their seats, others whispering heatedly. A young man in the back began typing furiously on his phone, the hashtag Keanu versus Joy already forming. Keanu remained composed, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of pain. "Joy, I don't claim to be a saint," he said. "I'm just a guy trying to do right by people." But Joy was relentless, her notes a weapon. "Just a guy," she mocked. "You grew up middle class in Toronto, never faced real hardship, yet you play this relatable everyman. Isn't that a bit dishonest?" The question distorted his life, ignoring the abandonment by his father at age 3, the years scraping by as a young actor, the profound losses that shaped his quiet compassion. Keanu's voice hardened slightly. "I never claimed to have faced the worst hardships. I've had tough times, like anyone. I don't pretend to be something I'm not." Joy leaned closer, sensing blood. "Your tough times, living in cheap hotels, chasing Hollywood dreams. You've romanticized that in interviews, haven't you? As if it makes you one of us." The audience's murmurs grew louder, some nodding in agreement, others visibly upset. A woman in the third row wiped her eyes, shaking her head. Whoopi tried again to steer the conversation. Joy, let's get back to the film. But Joy snapped. No, Whoopi, let's talk about what matters. Keanu, your tragedies, your relationships, your losses, don't they seem to follow you a bit too conveniently for sympathy? The studio fell deathly silent. Joy had crossed an unforgivable line, alluding to the stillbirth of Keanu's daughter, Ava, and other personal losses. The air felt heavy, as if the room itself held its breath. Sarah gasped audibly, her hand flying to her mouth. Sunny's eyes widened in horror. Whoopi stood, her voice firm. Joy, that's enough. But Joy ignored her, her eyes locked on Keanu. Come on, Keanu. Admit it. This nice guy persona is a carefully crafted lie. Keanu's hands trembled, not with fear, but with a restrained fury he'd buried for decades. His voice, when he spoke, was low and deliberate, cutting through the silence like a blade. Joy, you can question my career, my choices, my money. But you will not use my daughter's death as a weapon. The word daughter hung in the air, a sacred boundary violated. Ava, stillborn 25 years ago, was a wound Keanu rarely spoke of, a loss that defined his quiet compassion. Joy faltered for a moment, her bravado wavering, but she doubled down. Oh, now we see the real Keanu. Where's that zen calm when someone hits a nerve? The audience gasped, some standing, others pulling out phones to record. Hashtag Keanu vs. Joy surged on social media, the outrage immediate and visceral. A mother in the audience clutched her daughter's hand, tears streaming down her face. Keanu stood slowly, his movements fluid, radiating a quiet authority that silenced the room. Joy, he said, his voice steady but laced with steel. This isn't about me. This is about you. You're angry, at Hollywood, at privilege, at something deeper I can't know. You thought I'd be an easy target because I choose kindness. You thought I'd sit here and take it. He stepped toward the host's table, not threateningly, but with the presence of a man who had endured too much to be broken by words. You want to know about my life? He continued, his eyes locked on Joy's. My father left when I was 3. I worked dead-end jobs, slept in cars, ate ramen for weeks. Not because it was romantic, but because it was survival. I lost my daughter, Ava, before I could hold her. I lost people I loved. Those aren't stories I tell for sympathy. They're why I treat every person, every crew member, every fan, like they matter. Because they do. The audience was transfixed, some crying openly, others glaring at Joy. A man in the back row clenched his fists, his face red with anger. Keanu's voice grew stronger, each word carrying the weight of his lived experience. You want to talk about my money? Fine. I've donated most of it, 70% of my earnings over the last decade. Not because I want headlines, but because money is a tool, not a goal. I pay people to keep it quiet, but somehow it leaks. You want transparency. He pulled out his phone, holding it to the camera. This is my foundation's number. Call it. Audit it. Every penny is public. Joy, pale and trembling, tried to speak, but Keanu raised a hand, a gesture that carried absolute moral conviction. You took the worst pain of my life, Ava's death, and turned it into a weapon for entertainment. That's not journalism. That's cruelty. He removed his microphone, placing it on the table with deliberate care. I'm done here. But let me be clear. Kindness isn't a performance. It's a choice. I choose it every day because I know what it's like to have nothing. You chose cruelty today, Joy. That's on you. As Keanu walked off, the studio doors closed with a finality that echoed through the stunned silence. The audience was in chaos, some sobbing, others shouting, many filming on their phones. Producers scrambled backstage, debating whether to cut the feed. The executive producer, voice shaking, barked, "Keep rolling. The world needs to see this." Whoopi, her face heavy with disappointment, turned to Joy. You didn't just attack a guest. You attacked a grieving father. You used his child's death as a weapon. Joy sat frozen, her bravado shattered. Tears streamed down her face, her carefully curated image in ruins. I know, she choked out, her voice breaking. I wanted to prove he was fake. I wanted to believe kindness was a lie because it's easier to tear someone down than to face my own ugliness. Her confession hung in the air, raw and unfiltered. The cameras caught every moment, her makeup streaked, her hands shaking. I'm resigning, she announced, removing her microphone. Not to save face, but because I don't deserve this platform. She walked off, leaving the set in disarray. Sarah found her voice, trembling with emotion. In 20 years of television, I've never seen anything like this. Joy crossed a line that should never be crossed. Sunny, her eyes wet, added, We all failed today by letting it happen. Whoopi tried to close the show, her voice faltering. Ladies and gentlemen, what you've witnessed, there are no words. The broadcast ended not with credits, but with a heavy silence, millions of viewers left to process the moral spectacle. Joy's descent. Joy Behar's transformation began long before that fateful day, rooted in a career built on sharp wit and provocation. At 83, she'd spent decades as a polarizing figure, her biting commentary a hallmark of The View. But beneath the bravado lay a growing discontent. Years of chasing relevance in a cutthroat industry had left her jaded, her personal life a quiet void. Her marriage, strained by her relentless schedule, had frayed, and her friendships were largely professional. She envied figures like Keanu, whose effortless goodness seemed to mock her own struggles to feel fulfilled. In her mind, exposing him as a fraud would validate her cynicism, proving that no one was truly good, just better at hiding their flaws. The producers, sensing a ratings boost, had encouraged her to push the envelope with Keanu, unaware of how far she'd take it. Joy had spent days researching his life, poring over interviews, tabloid rumors, and financial records, convinced she'd find cracks in his saintly facade. Instead, she found nothing but consistency, a man who lived as he presented himself. This only fueled her anger, turning the interview into a personal crusade to tear him down. The aftermath. The View incident became a global phenomenon, dominating headlines and social media. Hashtag Keanu vs. Joy trended for weeks, with clips of Keanu's speech shared millions of times. Posts condemned Joy's cruelty, but many also praised Keanu's grace, his words. Kindness is a choice, becoming a cultural mantra. Talk shows across the industry adopted dignity protocols to prevent such ambushes, and networks faced pressure to rethink formats that thrived on manufactured outrage. The public's appetite for cruelty as entertainment began to wane, replaced by a growing demand for authenticity. Joy retreated to a small cottage in Vermont, selling her Manhattan apartment and shunning the spotlight. Haunted by Keanu's words, she began volunteering at a children's cancer ward, not for redemption but out of a desperate need to do something selfless. She read to patients, helped with art projects, and listened to their stories, their innocence a stark contrast to the world she'd inhabited. The children, unaware of her past, called her Mrs. B. And in their presence, she began to rediscover a part of herself she'd long buried. In a journal, she wrote, "Today, a girl named Lily asked why I look sad. I told her I hurt someone good. She said, 'Then be good now.'" Out of the mouths of babes. Keanu, true to his nature, shunned the media frenzy. He launched the Ava Foundation, dedicated to supporting families dealing with pregnancy loss and childhood cancer, channeling his pain into purpose. The foundation funded hospital visits, medical bills, and research, all without fanfare. Keanu visited children's wards himself, not for cameras but to honor Ava's memory, offering moments of connection to kids facing battles she never had the chance to fight. When asked about the incident, he said simply, "People make mistakes. What matters is what they do next." 6 months later, Joy wrote Keanu a 12-page letter, not seeking forgiveness but chronicling her transformation. "Your kindness exposed my cruelty," she wrote. "These children are teaching me to listen, to care, to add light instead of darkness. I'll never forgive myself, but I'm learning to be someone who'd never hurt you again." Keanu read it in his home office, surrounded by photos of Ava and loved ones lost. After a long silence, he called her. "Joy, it's Keanu," he said, his voice gentle. Joy nearly dropped the phone, her hands trembling. "I got your letter. I heard about your work with the kids." Joy wept, expecting condemnation but hearing none. "They don't know who you were," Keanu continued. "To them, you're Mrs. B, the lady who reads stories. That's who you're becoming." Joy whispered, "I destroyed myself that day." Keanu replied, "No, you revealed you're human, flawed, capable of cruelty, but capable of change. The question is who you choose to be now." There was no public reconciliation, no media spectacle. In a Vermont hospital, Joy learned to heal through kindness, while Keanu proved his was never an act. The View incident became a cultural touchstone, sparking debates about media ethics, the cost of cruelty, and the power of dignity. Years later, when asked about it, Keanu said, "The goal was never to destroy her. It was to hold up a mirror and hope she'd choose to see something worth changing." In the end, she did.